I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian, and welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today, a very special episode, at least for me, of The Sidebar. Carrie Hayes, friend of the show. Many people who listen to the show, I think, know Carrie. He hosts a show in Chattanooga called Clap 3 Times. He was really nice to have me on. It's a show where he has guests on who aren't necessarily part of music, but music is important to him, and has them talk about 4 different songs and why they're important in different ways, and very nice of him to have me on there. So what you'll hear today is Carrie Hayes interviewing me on his podcast, Clap 3 Times, and hope you enjoy it.
Eric Barnes, thanks for doing Clap 3 Times.
Yeah, it's good to meet you.
It is very nice to finally meet you. Heard a lot about you. Some of it, good. What is it you do?
I do a number of things in and around media and books and writing. So I am primarily the host. People know me as CEO of the Daily Memphian, the new site, because this is in Chattanooga. This is playing along with playing in Memphis on WYXR.
That's right.
The Sidebar.
That's right.
And have been executive editor off and on at Daily Memphian. And then I also host Behind the Headlines, a weekly show on our PBS affiliate in Memphis. And I have for coming up on 15 years.
Yeah.
And The Sidebar, this podcast on WYXR. And then as a side note, I own these community papers across the state. Including the Memphis Daily News, the West Tennessee News, the Nashville Ledger, the Knoxville Ledger, and the Hamilton County Herald in the great city of Chattanooga.
That's right, which may be familiar to some WTC listeners. I also know you as a novelist, published novelist.
Yes. And
want you to tell us a little bit about that process and particularly how music fits into that to the degree that it does.
So all I ever wanted to do was write books, and was the story, but I had got out of school with student loans, and I needed to get a job, so I started working in journalism. And so I've kind of been in and out of that the whole time. But I published a lot of short stories. I published 4 novels. And music has always been a big part of me sitting and writing and listening to music. I mean, I can remember my college, what ultimately turned into my second book, Something Beautiful, sitting in my apartment in New York, listening to really, really loud Nirvana and Pearl Jam, some of the first albums, just like ear-splittingly loud. And that's kind of how I would write back then.
I'm sure your neighbors enjoyed that.
Yeah. My neighbor was having an affair with Geraldo Rivera. It was pretty awesome, actually, because we'd see Geraldo coming up and down the stairs. It was good. Or it was seeing him. I think it was an affair. Yeah. Probably get sued. But it kind of calms me down, whatever I'm listening to. And I write in public spaces a lot. Like I like to write in bars. I like to sometimes in coffee shops, here in Crosstown where we're sitting in Memphis. But I like to have music. So I kind of like I don't like a dark, quiet place to write, which some people do, and everybody's different. And I kind of listen to sometimes the same set of songs in the same order on a specific book.
Interesting.
So I have these kind of playlists of songs that I've listened to that kind of evolve over time.
Interesting.
For each book.
And you're kind of curating those in real time, depending on how you're writing.
Yeah. And mixing and matching them and stuff. And then I also, sometimes it's funny because I have to be careful that if I'm listening to something really loud like Nirvana, that I don't assume everybody else is going to hear that when they're reading the book in that moment. Like Something Beautiful is a pretty violent, it's an exceedingly violent book. And that really, those Nirvana and early Pearl Jam is it's not violent music, but it's very aggressive and abrasive.
Yeah.
So it's like, one, it's sort of inspiring, but also you can't assume that everyone else is hearing that music as you're writing.
Yeah. So you have been, I gathered you formed your taste of music pretty young, pretty early in your adolescence. The first song you gave me was from Led Zeppelin 4. I wouldn't say the best known, maybe the deepest cut on this album, a song called 4 Sticks.
Yeah.
Got its name from John Bonham playing the drums with 4 sticks, which was the way the song was named.
Yeah.
Tell me about this song in particular. I know this is a band that has a high degree of relevance in your life.
Yeah, I mean, all the songs I picked are bands I listen to a lot. And early on, it kind of started with my cousin Chris, who at the time seemed like he was about 10 years older than me and my brother when we started. He was our babysitter when we were like 6 and 7. In fact, he was like 3 years older than my brother, making him 4 to 5 years older than me. He was a kid. But he listened to Led Zeppelin. And I remember when Led Zeppelin toured their last tour in 77 in the US, and he went to the Seattle Kingdom. And my brother and I just were like, oh my God. And we were listening to Led Zeppelin on, 8-track tapes and doing things that won't get repeated here. And so early on, Led Zeppelin was like this thing because my brother and I kind of worshipped our cousin as an older brother. And he is and was this amazingly charismatic, brilliant guy whose life is really kind of not good and has always been not good. But he's a brilliant guy. It's really sad. And so that started there. And then when I got to the point that I could sort of buy some money, so I'd heard the Led Zeppelin songs that were on the radio. I can remember hearing Stairway to Heaven. I can remember hearing, Whole Lot of Love, other stuff. But then when I got to where I had a little bit of money, I could buy an album, and listening to that whole album, there was this song that was just so different than anything I'd ever heard on what then was not classic rock, but what we think of it now as classic rock radio. And it was just, it's so different. It's Middle Eastern. There's an orchestra back there. There's, now having read about the song, there's all this kind of effects and so on. But it's also one of the songs, I never saw Led Zeppelin live. I've seen Robert Plant a bunch, and I've seen Jimmy Page in various forms and all that. It's one of the few songs that Robert Plant has done in almost every iteration of his bands. And he's had many, many bands. Yeah. There was one, his original stuff, he sort of explicitly didn't play any Led Zeppelin, but he does now. And that's one song. And he does it in lots of different ways. He doesn't try to replicate that original version. There's actually a live version that you can find on YouTube that's really obscure that almost sounds like a punk rock song because it's stripped down to just the 3 musicians and 1 singer versus the kind of orchestra and all the stuff that goes on in the original. So, yeah. Yeah.
You also said it was the song, if you could listen to one song over and over again for the rest of your life. This was the one you chose.
Yeah. Because it's I thought about it other, but it's relatively long. I mean, it's probably a 6-minute song, so it's not short. And it has probably 3 or 4 different, very distinct parts. Yeah. There's a lot going on in it. And I try not to listen to it very often. Because you sort of want to preserve your love for certain songs, unlike the songs I listen to over and over again when I'm writing. So I don't want to listen to 4/6 every day, but if I was stuck listening to one last song, it would be way up there.
Interesting. When you are listening to music now, I mean, outside of the writing, is it on in the house all the time? Is it on in the car all the time? I mean, are you just consuming music?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm bad. I go in ruts where I'm just listening to the same stuff, and then I get kind of trying to listen to new stuff. And Leslie, my girlfriend who I live with, she's playing other stuff, which is really great. And she uses Spotify and I use Apple, music. So that's kind of awesome because there's this stuff playing and I can, Shazam it and go, oh, wait, what is that? And then I get in ruts. But yeah, and I also, I try to be disciplined about not listening to too many podcasts and too much news, So I'll be like, why am I listening to news right now? Stop. Yeah. Just listen to some music. Take your brain away. Yeah. Reminder, I'm Eric Barnes, and this is The Sidebar, and this is a special crossover podcast event with Kerry Hayes, friend of the show, friend of Memphis, friend of Chattanooga. His podcast is Clap 3 Times. It airs on the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, their radio station there, the NPR affiliate. And he's nice enough to have me on, but I want to break in for a second just to remind everyone that this is The Sidebar. It airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30, focused on the community, arts, culture, everything in between. It's not just a radio show, though. It's one of a number of weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Memphis Grizzlies podcast, our food podcast, Soundbites, hosted by Holly Whitfield. And that podcast also airs here on WYXR every Thursday at 11. I'll also note that we host the podcast version of Behind the Headlines, the TV show we produce with the folks at WKNO every week. All of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the WYXR shows, that's The Sidebar and Soundbites, on WYXR.org, or download the WYXR app. It includes all the WYXR shows, the talk shows and the music shows, archives of the shows that all the various volunteers and hosts do on WYXR all week long. If you're not a supporter of WYXR, it is nonprofit, listener-supported radio, so consider becoming a member. You get all kinds of member benefits, or you can do a one-off donation. You can do that through the site or the app. And if you're not a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, do consider becoming one. Subscriptions are the bulk. Over 50% of our revenue comes from paid subscriptions, along with advertising and events and other things we do. We're also a nonprofit. We take donations, and we are the largest newsroom in the region. Recently on the podcast, we've had Tad Pearson, the tire art artist. He was fantastic. It's worth going back and listen. Jeff Kolath, who is the executive director of the Sultana Disaster Museum, and Marina Caracedo. It was great talking about this Spanish cultural series that's coming up at the Brooks. You can learn more about that at SpanishCulturalSeries.com. I mentioned behind the headlines. Coming up soon, we've got folks from MIFA talking about some of the impacts of federal budget cuts that have locally. And we recently did a series of shows on various aspects of the criminal justice system. That included Bill Gibbons, the former DA, former head of Tennessee Homeland Security, now the head of the Memphis Shelby County Crime Commission. We had Josh Spickler and Yanae Gibson from Just City on talking about all kinds of parts of the really wonky but really interesting conversation about various parts of the criminal justice system and the courts. And then DA Steve Mulroy on the show talking about the criminal justice system and all aspects of that. Now we're back to Clap 3 Times, Kerry Hayes interviewing me on his podcast.
Next song you gave me was another real downer, I gotta say.
Yeah, there weren't any uplifting songs in the
no bops.
And I do listen to more uplifting songs, but that was not.
But for this conversation, we wanted to get real, into our
yeah.
feelings. A song called "True Love Waits," which is a Radiohead. I mean, I don't know if it's the deepest of deep cuts, but a song that has a really storied history with this band. You can find live versions of it going back to 1995.
Yeah.
Recorded it several times off and on over their career and almost made it to a few albums. And finally, the sort of official album cut was in 2016, which was their most recent studio album. This record called A Moon-Shaped Pool. Just a killer. Just a killer of a song lyrically. Yeah. This particular arrangement on the official version is I won't say hard to listen to, but it's a little hard to listen to. It's a little tough to listen to. There's a vulnerability happening with the lyrics in particular that's a little uncommon for them. Yeah. And I don't know. How did you... I know this is one of your favorite bands. Why this song in particular?
I mean, for everything you just said, I mean, it's just a really dark and beautiful song. And it was interesting. I had never heard any of the other versions, as much as I like Radiohead. I don't remember ever hearing the other versions until the album came out. I love that album. You and I saw him in New Orleans on that tour.
Yeah, that's right.
I saw him a bunch of times on that tour, like 5 times, I think, on that tour. And they played it live, I think, in that way. I don't know when we saw it, but I meant to go back and check. But anyway, I love that album, and I do love Radiohead. And but to hear the earlier versions, you're like, oh yeah, those are fine.
Yeah.
They're just okay.
Yeah.
And then they slowed it down and stripped it down.
Yeah.
And it just almost feels like they're like a warm up before the tape played and they wanted to play the song slow. I know that's not what happened, but they just thought, well, let's just play it with the piano, slow it way down.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of bass that comes in. There's almost like a second piano that comes in or something. And it's just beautiful.
It is. Yeah.
And haunting.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah, a confessional quality to it that's really...
But you know one thing about me with music is I don't listen to lyrics. You know this, right? We've talked about this, and I think you've blocked this out. I can tell from your face. This is a really important thing.
This is an audio medium. Talk about people, I'm offended right now.
I'm not moved by the lyrics of a song. I don't listen to lyrics very much.
So you make words for a living.
Yes.
This is what you do as a profession.
Do, pretty much.
Yeah. But when other people do it, not so.
I don't. I'm not really particularly into singer-songwriters. I don't have a problem with it. That doesn't speak to me.
Yeah.
Like, you and I, we saw Wilco together, right? At the Orpheum. That was a great show.
Yeah.
And Wilco, I hear from friends and I read on the internets that, they have some really meaningful lyrics for people. I really like Wilco a lot. I don't know. I couldn't name a single line.
Yeah.
I could barely, I've listened to you think about Radiohead or Led Zeppelin or another band, we'll talk about I can barely quote from songs I've listened to hundreds of times.
But this is an odd question. You do, the voice, whatever's happening vocally.
I'm way into that.
Yeah. But it's just another instrument.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's one of my favorite Led Zeppelin songs is Carousel Alhambra from their last album. And, people write that album off. It was kind of the end. There's some really great songs on there. And one is Carousel Alhambra. And the way it's mixed, you really, you just can't understand the words. and it's amazing to me. That's kind of a perfect song to me because it's 4 instruments. It's these keyboards, the guitars, the drums, and this amazing voice. And I don't even need to think about the lyrics. I think I said this to somebody recently about the lyrics thing I think it's partly beginning to listen to so much music in the 70s when so much of the music, Led Zeppelin very much included, was just sort of, it's not deep. It's girls, it's cars, it's I want to rock out. It's all kinds of like, why listen to that? But I might love the song.
Yeah.
You know?
Or there's a sort of faux deepness because it's pulling a lot from the works of Tolkien and sort of
or
Nordic
the Who,
mythology.
Or all those. The Stone, I love the Rolling Stones, but I don't know. I mean, I like the sound of the music, but I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, I know another band you love is Sigur Rós, which sings in a completely made-up language.
Yeah,
that no one can
love
understand.
that. Yes, love it. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And same with, so Silver Mount Zion, the other song.
So this was a song that I listened to once all the way through, a true opus. We won't have time to give listeners the entire thing, but you should seek out What We Loved Was Not Enough. Great name for a song and a great lyric throughout. I can't repeat the name of the album on public radio, but fascinating band. But as you said, sort of deep into kind of the atmospherics of what they're presenting as a band. I have to admit, I knew nothing about this group. How did this song come into your life?
They are. People are more familiar with Godspeed You Black Emperor. So Silver Mount Zion was a side project. They've probably done 5 albums, and I like Godspeed. But I love Silver Mount Zion. So the difference being there's no singing. If people know Godspeed You Black Emperor, I always describe it as like super pretentious Canadian art rock, with violins.
Super pretentious.
Super pretentious. It really, have we seen Godspeed together? I can't remember.
I've never seen Godspeed.
Okay. Yeah. So I really enjoy it. I love it a bunch. I started listening to Godspeed and they're great. Then I kind of was looking for other music like that, and their labels Constellation Records, and there's this Silver Mount Zion. So I listened to a couple of those, amazing. And then I look at the liner notes back when we got liner notes, and I realized it was kind of the same band, and even a band called Set Fire to Flames, which was kind of sort of a precursor to Godspeed. So I listen to all 3 of them, and I think of them as one band because the core people are pretty similar. And that I listen to a ton when I write, which probably that would make more sense because it's a little more orchestral. Then the singing is, again, for me, is much more of an instrument, not the lyrics.
Interesting. Yeah. Tell me about this song in particular. Was there anything that just resonated with this?
I think it's kind of, it starts slow, it builds. I couldn't play a note of music to save my life. So I struggled to describe how a song is structured. But I think it's just it's a really beautifully and amazingly structured song. And it is the full force. There's probably 3 songs like that. There's another one that I really like from Silver Mount Zion. There's one called Epiphany Rambler, and the one that I just drew a blank on, but, that are all real similarly, not like copying them, but they're just these similar structures of this kind of quiet. It builds. It's like listening to classical, really loud classical music at some level.
Yeah.
And
in the exact opposite direction, one of the bonus tracks you gave me, song you listen to when you're really PO'd.
Which I did. I love that question. That was great.
Sabbath. I mean, I've gotten the most interesting response to that one. You said it was Sabbath's "Fairies Wear Boots" from the Paranoid album, 1970. I mean, this was early Sabbath.
Yeah, second album basically.
Yeah. How'd you find Sabbath? What's your connection?
When I guess I'd heard stuff on the radio, Paranoid and all that, and Iron Man. But then I guess I was in 8th grade. I think I was in 7th grade. And my brother bought a couple of albums. He bought Led Zeppelin 2 and Paranoid for 25 cents each and Led Zeppelin 1 at a garage sale, and brought them home, and they were on the Zenith, kind of like console stereo that my mom had. And just, there's nothing else to listen to. We didn't have a lot of time of music I would listen to, and I did like all of it a bunch, but that one particularly, it's a pretty complicated song by Black Sabbath standards. There's all kinds
movements,
of
there's
tempo changes. There's just, it's a really, it reminds me a little bit of, it's not a similar song to Four Sticks, but it just kind of, it's so different than the rest of the album.
Yeah.
the rest of the album is Paranoid and Iron Man, and really like, I think Black Sabbath is best, but like it's Black Sabbath.
Sure.
But somehow Fairies Wear Boots, it was complicated.
Yeah. These are like four simple men playing complicated music. Yeah. And it rocks. And yeah. And it's one of those songs that sounds better when you turn it all the way up. It sounds better loud.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
And there's a great thing about, what's his name? Tommy Iommi, the guitar player, talking about what it was like to make music at that time. He said, there was the Beatles and there were these people doing this happy music. And he just starts like basically swearing about how I didn't understand any of that. We were in Birmingham. It was still post-war. We were poor. We were just angry. And we just wanted to play music that reflected all that anger. And I think that album, the first two albums particularly, and that song particularly just reflects that anger.
Yeah.
I sound like a really, really dark, angry, sad person when you highlight the music this way.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I could have lied. I should have lied and done some other, songs.
No, this is why we do the show, because it really gets to the real essence of people. But what we find through these conversations is we really expose people's inner thoughts and actual dimension as people. So
yeah,
I'm kidding.
It's like, wow. Okay.
Eric, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about your work?
I guess they can go to ericbarnes.net. And I have a Wikipedia page that's really funny.
That you maintain every day?
Every day. And there's a quote from about my book that appeared in the National Review. Have I ever told you that?
Yeah,
this
is news to me. Like breaking news.
Yes, it's fairly interesting. I like that. So that kind of has links to everything, the books and the stories and Daily Memphian and all the other papers and the shows and so on.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
All right. That is all we have today. Again, thanks to Kerry Hayes for hosting me on his show, Clap 3 Times. And if you missed any of that episode, you can go and you can look for Clap 3 Times, Kerry's show, or you can just look for the sidebar wherever you get your podcasts, Daily Memphian, WYXR, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.